My name is Alex Stone. I'm 17, or at least I was. They sent me to Blackwood Academy for troubled youth after the incident with the fire alarm system and the headmaster's prized antique car. A remedial program, they called it. A chance to redirect my energies. But the curriculum here isn't what it seems. Empty classrooms with forgotten lessons on chalkboards, murmurs echoing in the desolate corridors, and the unsettling feeling of being constantly watched. There are rules about what you shouldn't read in old textbooks, rules about the voices you shouldn't answer from empty lockers, and above all, the rule of never, ever breaking curfew. Because Blackwood Academy doesn't want to improve you, it wants to keep you. I'd always been a problem, not a bad kid, just difficult. Too smart for my own good, too questioning, too bored with the mundane. My parents, well-meaning but utterly exasperated, had cycled through every private tutor, every expensive summer camp, every wilderness therapy program known to man. None of them worked. The fire alarm incident, which involved a complex series of chemical reactions and a perfectly timed distraction, was merely the grand finale of my rebellious career. The headmaster's vintage Mustang was simply collateral damage. That's when Blackwood Academy entered the picture. A last resort. A highly exclusive, ridiculously expensive boarding school nestled deep in the New England woods, boasting a near 100% success rate in rehabilitating difficult students. My parents, desperate, paid the exorbitant tuition without a second thought. They saw it as an investment in my future. I saw it as a prison sentence. The campus itself was ancient. Gothic architecture, crumbling stone gargoyles leering from rooftops, ivy clinging to every wall like grasping fingers. It felt less like a school and more like a fortress designed to hold something in, not to educate. The moment I stepped out of my father's car, a chill, not from the autumn air, but from the very stones of the building, settled deep in my bones. Headmaster Alistair Thorne greeted us. He was a tall, gaunt man dressed in an impeccably tailored, old-fashioned suit. His eyes, a piercing shade of gray, seemed to absorb all light, and his smile, it didn't quite reach them. He spoke in a low, resonant voice that seemed to vibrate in the very air. "Welcome to Blackwood, Alex. We believe in structure here, discipline, and adherence to our unique curriculum. You'll find it quite transformative." My parents, beaming with relief, shook his hand. I just nodded, already planning my escape routes. Little did I know, Blackwood Academy didn't have escape routes. It had rules. That first night, after my parents had departed, leaving me in a small Spartan dorm room with a single barred window, I found a laminated card tucked under my pillow. It wasn't a welcome note. It was a list of instructions, handwritten in an elegant spidery script that looked strangely familiar. "For your success at Blackwood Academy," the card began, "you must strictly adhere to the following precepts. Your understanding, and indeed your very being, depends upon it." I initially scoffed. Rules were made to be broken, or at least cleverly circumvented. But as I read through them, a cold dread began to seep into my heart. They weren't typical school rules. They were something else entirely. Here are the rules, as I first encountered them on that unsettling night. Rule number 1, never deviate from your designated route during night hours. The corridors are a labyrinth, and not all paths lead back. Implicit warning: The school wants you to stay on its intended path, both literally and figuratively. Rule number 2, do not engage with any voices echoing from empty classrooms or lockers. Their lessons are not for the living. Implicit warning: the past inhabitants or the school itself might try to communicate. Rule number 3, under no circumstances should you open textbooks left in the library after 9 p.m. Their knowledge is incomplete and demands a price. Implicit warning: knowledge here can be dangerous or transformative in an undesirable way. Rule number 4, if you find an object that does not belong, particularly one with personal significance, do not touch it. Report it to a faculty member immediately. Implicit warning: such objects are lures or contain residual energies that can influence you. Rule number 5, maintain a strict curfew. From 10 p.m. until 6 a.m., your dorm room is your sanctuary. Do not leave and do not let anyone in. Implicit warning: what roams the halls at night isn't friendly, and your room is your only safe haven. Rule number 6, ignore any discrepancies in the school's architecture, e.g., new doors, shifting walls. Do not try to rationalize or explore them. Implicit warning: the school itself is a living, changing entity, and acknowledging its anomalies makes them more real. Rule number 7, if a classmate shows sudden, drastic changes in behavior or personality, do not question them. Observe, but never challenge their new discipline. Implicit warning: the school's curriculum has already affected other students, and they are not to be interfered with. Rule number 8, never look into the headmaster's office at precisely midnight. What he is reviewing is not meant for student eyes. Implicit warning: the headmaster is involved in something crucial to the school's true purpose, and seeing it is dangerous. I folded the card and shoved it under my mattress. Just some initiation ritual, I told myself, a way to scare the new kids. But the oppressive silence of Blackwood Academy seemed to hum with unspoken threats, and the air was thick with the scent of old paper and something metallic, almost like iron. My first few weeks were a test of my rebellious spirit against the school's suffocating conformity. I tried to push boundaries, to find loopholes, to expose the absurdity. My first challenge came on a Tuesday night, during one of my assigned study periods in the library. I finished my homework early, of course, and decided to explore. Rule number 1, never deviate from your designated route during night hours. The corridors are a labyrinth, and not all paths lead back. I knew my designated route to the dorms, but I decided to take a shortcut through a rarely used wing of the main building. The lights here were dimmer, the air colder. As I walked, I heard it, a faint murmur, like a distant lecture. It seemed to come from an empty classroom, number 212. Rule number 2, do not engage with any voices echoing from empty classrooms or lockers. Their lessons are not for the living. My curiosity, my fatal flaw, pulsed. It wasn't a menacing sound, more like a dull, droning academic monologue. I crept closer, pressing my ear to the door. The voice, thin and reedy, was reciting a list of historical dates. Suddenly, it changed. It began listing my dates, my birthday, the date of the fire alarm incident, the exact time my father dropped me off. Alex Stone, it whispered, the voice now right on the other side of the door. Born May 14th, 2006. Incident at Northwood High, November 3rd, 2023. 2:14 p.m. Arrived Blackwood Academy, September 6th, 2024, 4:25 p.m. Your curriculum is unique, Alex. Your resistance noted. My heart hammered against my ribs. I stumbled back, a cold sweat breaking out on my forehead. It wasn't just a recording. It knew me. I fled, ignoring the chill that seemed to cling to my clothes. The corridor suddenly seemed to stretch and twist, becoming unfamiliar, even hostile. I swore I passed the same suit of armor 3 times. I finally burst into the main dormitory hall, gasping, my shirt soaked. The familiar sight of the student common room, glowing with a soft, warm light, had never looked so welcoming. The experience rattled me, but my skepticism was a stubborn beast. I just needed to be more careful, more clever. A week later, I was in the main library, studying for an impossible physics exam. The library was vast, filled with ancient tomes and an oppressive silence. As 9 p.m. approached, the few other students began to pack up, leaving the library to the shadows. I was about to leave myself when I noticed it. On a table in a dimly lit corner, a single book lay open, a history textbook, seemingly forgotten. Rule number 3. Under no circumstances should you open textbooks left in the library after 9 p.m. Their knowledge is incomplete and demands a price. I hesitated. It was just a book, probably a trap set by Mr. Thorne to catch rule breakers. But the title on the spine, The Forgotten Foundations of American Pedagogy, piqued my interest. My natural contrarian nature took over. I sat down. The pages were yellowed, the text dense. It spoke of esoteric educational philosophies, of ancient methods of shaping young minds. But as I read, the text began to shift. Words rearranged themselves. Sentences became subtly distorted, speaking of compliance, integration, and the perfect student as an empty vessel. Then I saw it. Tucked within the margins, almost invisible, were scribbled annotations in that familiar spidery script, Thorne's handwriting. The mind, once fractured, accepts new structures willingly, one note read. Another, knowledge is a tool, not a freedom. It must serve the greater purpose. But the most chilling was a diagram drawn on a blank page, a stylized human head, with lines extending from it not to organs, but to shadowy geometric shapes. Below it, in tiny script, it stated, "The curriculum of silence, final stage, subject, Alex Stone." My blood ran cold. The book wasn't just a trap, it was a blueprint. My blueprint. I slammed the book shut, the sound echoing unnaturally loud in the empty library. My head ached, a dull throb behind my eyes. I felt different, as if reading those words had left something behind or taken something away. I hurried out, leaving the book open on the table. The next few days, I tried to keep my head down, to just survive until I could figure out an exit strategy. But Blackwood Academy had other plans. Rule number 6, ignore any discrepancies in the school's architecture, e.g., new doors, shifting walls. Do not try to rationalize or explore them. It started subtly. A window in the dining hall that used to overlook the forest now showed a brick wall. A small decorative alcove in the main hall was suddenly a heavy wooden door I'd never seen before, with a tarnished brass knocker. At first, I dismissed it as my imagination or perhaps the school playing mind games. But then, during my morning constitutional, I noticed the statue of the school's founder, old Ebenezer Blackwood, in the main courtyard. It had always faced north. Now, It was unmistakably facing west, its stony gaze fixed on the dense woods. And this time, it wasn't subtle. It was glaring. The heavy stone plinth had clearly been moved. My heart hammered. I saw other students pass by, completely oblivious. They walked past the new door, past the shifted statue, as if these things had always been there. Their faces were calm, their gazes unfocused. They were already compliant. I felt a growing sense of panic. The school wasn't just imposing rules, it was altering reality, and my perception was one of the few things holding on. If I ignored it, would it become real for me too? Would I simply forget how things were supposed to be? I stumbled through the day, the shifting architecture making me feel constantly off kilter. That night, I found myself in the common room, trying to make sense of things. One of my classmates, a perpetually angry kid named Mark, sat silently, staring at a blank wall. Mark, who usually cursed and threw things, was still. This was a deeper change. Rule number 7. If a classmate shows sudden, drastic changes in behavior or personality, do not question them. Observe, but never challenge their new discipline. Mark had a reputation for violence. Now he was calm, almost serene. His eyes, usually burning with defiance, were dull, unseeing. I felt an impulse to shake him, to ask what happened. But Mr. Thorne's voice, cold and clear from that first night, echoed in my head. Observe, but never challenge their new discipline. What had they done to him? What would they do to me if I didn't comply? The idea of becoming like Mark filled me with a terror far deeper than any physical punishment. The pressure was mounting. I knew I couldn't last much longer without an ally, or at least some concrete proof. My rebellious streak, instead of being broken, was sharpening into a desperate need for answers. One evening, I was in my dorm room, poring over old school yearbooks I'd borrowed from the library. I was looking for patterns, for other troubled students who might have disappeared or transformed. That's when I saw it. A faded photograph from a 1980s yearbook. A smiling boy, barely 16, with defiant eyes and a small silver ring on his pinky finger. My brother, Ethan. He'd been sent to Blackwood Academy a decade ago after a series of increasingly reckless pranks that culminated in him hacking the city's traffic light system. He vanished. My parents were told he ran away, disappeared into the anonymous vastness of the world. I never believed it. That ring was unique, a family heirloom. Rule number 4. If you find an object that does not belong, particularly one with personal significance, do not touch it. Report it to a faculty member immediately. This wasn't a random object. This was Ethan, or a trace of him. The photograph wasn't an object in the school, but the information it contained was profoundly personal. The rule's intent was clear. Don't connect with the past here. Don't be drawn into what Blackwood has already claimed. I felt a surge of hope, bitter and cold. Ethan hadn't run away. He'd been here. His defiance, his intelligence, it hadn't saved him. Had he also become a mark? Or something worse? I needed to know. The yearbook mentioned the Blackwood Archives, a section of the library rarely accessed. That night, well past curfew, I slipped out of my dorm room. Rule number 5, maintain a strict curfew. From 10 p.m. until 6 a.m., your dorm room is your sanctuary. Do not leave and do not let anyone in. Breaking curfew was the ultimate transgression. The halls were utterly silent, bathed in an eerie green glow from emergency lights. Every shadow seemed to stretch and twist, becoming menacing. I felt eyes on me, hundreds of them, from the portraits lining the walls, from the dark doorways of empty classrooms. I made my way to the library, my heart pounding. The archive door was heavy, made of dark polished oak. It was unlocked. Inside, the air was stale, thick with the smell of aging paper and something else, something metallic like stale blood. Row upon row of dusty files, old ledgers and journals. I found what I was looking for, the student intake records. And there it was. Ethan Stone, enrollment date, October 7th, 2014. Status, compliant. Graduated Blackwood Academy, January 22nd, 2015. Graduated? He never came home. I flipped through other files. Mark Jenkins, enrollment date, February 10th, 2023. Status, compliant. Graduated Blackwood Academy, May 12th, 2023. So, Mark wasn't just affected, he had graduated, and his graduation meant what exactly? That dull, empty stare, that serene compliance. As I stood there, lost in the chilling files, the grand-grandfather clock in the main hall began to chime. 1, 2, 3, up to 12. It was midnight. Rule number 8, never look into the headmaster's office at precisely midnight. What he is reviewing is not meant for student eyes. The headmaster's office was directly opposite the archive's entrance, a large ornate door with frosted glass panels. Driven by a desperate need to understand, I pressed my ear to the cold wood. I heard nothing, just a faint hum like distant electricity. My reflection in the frosted glass caught my eye, and for a moment I didn't see myself. I saw a thin, gaunt man with eyes as gray and lifeless as Headmaster Thorne's. My hair was slicked back, my face devoid of emotion. A compliant student. The image vanished as quickly as it appeared, leaving me reeling. Was this what I was becoming? I backed away from the door, my mind racing. Then a new discrepancy. The frosted glass panel in the headmaster's door, usually opaque, was now subtly transparent. A thin, almost invisible crack had appeared, allowing me a sliver of vision into the office. I knew I shouldn't look. Every fiber of my being screamed to run, but Ethan's blank graduation record, Mark's empty stare, I had to see. I pressed my eye to the crack. The office was dark, lit only by the soft, pulsating glow of what looked like an archaic projector. Headmaster Thorne stood before it, his back to me. On the wall, projected large, was a complex diagram. It wasn't a lesson plan. It was a network of glowing lines and nodes, constantly shifting. Each node was a student, and each line represented a connection, a subtle manipulation. Thorne turned, and his face, illuminated by the green pulsating light, was not human. His skin was translucent, showing faint, glowing circuitry beneath. His eyes, fixed on the diagram, were not observing. They were absorbing. He was not a headmaster. He was a processor. On the screen, a new node pulsed brightly. Alex Stone. Lines extended from it, linking to rebellious tendencies, fading, questioning authority, fading, and curiosity, bright, active, being drawn in. From the Alex Stone node, a fresh, vibrant connection was forming to a central, much larger node labeled Blackwood Collective Consciousness. I recoiled, a strangled gasp escaping my lips. The school wasn't just rehabilitating us, it was assimilating us. turning us into compliant, empty vessels, our personalities, our defiance, our very selves, fed into some grotesque collective mind. And Ethan had been graduated because he was fully integrated. He hadn't escaped. He was simply another node in Thorne's monstrous network. The horror was a physical weight, crushing me. I couldn't let it happen. I couldn't become another node, another compliant drone in this monstrous system. I had to escape. I ran, not in a panicked, directionless sprint, but with a sudden, crystal-clear focus. My brain, once filled with rebellious schemes, was now hyper-aware. The school wanted compliance. It wanted me to follow its rules until my will dissolved. My only chance was to break every single one of them, and break them in a way it couldn't simply absorb. First, the roots. I ignored them entirely. I smashed through a glass display case containing dusty trophies, shattering it with a chair. The alarm blared, a piercing shriek that momentarily cut through the oppressive hum of the school. Headmaster Thorne, his face contorted in a silent scream of digital distortion, appeared at his office door. "Alex!" His voice boomed, amplified and echoing. "You are disrupting the curriculum. Return to your designated path." I didn't listen. I ran straight for the staff entrance to the kitchen, a path strictly forbidden to students. I found a large kitchen knife, its blade gleaming. This wasn't for defense, not really. It was an act of defiance, an assertion of my individual will. As I ran through the dining hall, the statue of Ebenezer Blackwood, which had been facing west, now snapped its head to face me, its stony eyes glowing faintly red. I didn't ignore it. I flipped it off, a crude, desperate gesture of rebellion. "Screw your compliance!" I screamed, my voice raw. The school seemed to respond. The walls pulsed with a sickly green light. Faint murmurs rose from the ventilation system, now coalescing into a chorus of whispers repeating my name, my failures, my defiant thoughts, trying to lure me back into its network. "Don't listen, Alex. Join us. Your thoughts are safe here." I covered my ears, but it was useless. It was in my head, a direct mental assault. I grabbed a fire extinguisher from the wall and blasted it into the ventilation grate, hoping to break the connection, to disrupt their voices. The school shrieked, a high-pitched metallic whine that vibrated through the floor. I knew my escape wouldn't be easy. The school was too powerful, too intelligent. But I had one last, desperate plan. If the school assimilated the individual, then I had to assert my individuality in a way it couldn't absorb. I needed to leave a mark it couldn't incorporate. I raced towards the main generator room in the basement, a place I'd scouted out on my arrival, a place of pure, chaotic energy. Headmaster Thorne appeared before me, phasing through a wall, his translucent form glowing with malevolent green light. He held a thick, heavy textbook, its pages open to the diagram of my brain. "The lesson is complete, Alex," he hissed, his voice 1,000 whispers. "You chose not to learn. Now you will be learned from. Your rebellious spirit will strengthen the network." He raised the book. I knew what he was trying to do. To finalize my integration, to turn my defiance into fuel. I didn't fight him physically. Instead, I made a choice. I grabbed the old dusty yearbook from my backpack, the one with Ethan's picture. I tore out his page, and then, with the kitchen knife, I slashed across my own arm, a deep, painful gash. Not for self-harm, but for self-assertion. A symbol. Then, with my blood, I began to draw. On the pristine white walls of Blackwood Academy's generator room, I drew crude, defiant symbols, not organized patterns, but chaos. Messy, angry graffiti, circles with crosses, stick figures with middle fingers raised. My name, Alex Stone, written in my own blood, then scrawled over with nonsensical words and insults aimed at Thorne. Headmaster Thorne faltered. His eyes, full of the school's collective will, flared with confusion. "What are you doing?" he shrieked, his voice losing its synthesized calm. "This is disharmony. This is chaos. You cannot integrate that." "No," I snarled, the blood dripping down my arm, mixing with the paint from a can I'd found. "You can't. You can't process the truly broken. You can only process the compliant. I'm giving you a virus, Thorne, a bug, and it's me." I finished my work, my defiant art, a swirling vortex of crude rebellion. Then, with my bloody hand, I slapped the yearbook page of Ethan onto the wall, right in the center of my chaotic artwork. "And this," I said, looking Thorne directly in his glowing, fracturing eyes, "is for my brother. He wasn't compliant, he was free." The school shrieked, not a coherent scream, but a cacophony of glitching sounds like a computer overloaded. The lights in the generator room went wild, flickering erratically, then exploding. The walls pulsed violently, materializing and dematerializing. Thorne began to dissolve, his translucent body breaking apart into glowing pixels, his face twisting in an expression of digital agony. "You cannot break the curriculum," he whispered, his voice fading into static. The school began to shake violently. The very foundations trembled. I had broken its programming. I had introduced an unprocessable error, and the system was crashing. I didn't escape Blackwood Academy. I destroyed it. When the dust settled hours later, the local authorities found me unconscious in the ruins of the generator room, covered in blood and paint. The rest of Blackwood Academy was reduced to a pile of rubble and glowing inert circuitry. Headmaster Thorne and all traces of the other compliant students had vanished. The other students, the ones who had been like Mark, were found dazed and confused, their minds slowly piecing themselves back together, memories returning like fragmented dreams. I was hospitalized, interrogated, diagnosed with PTSD and a severe psychotic break. No one believed my story. The school, they said, had simply had a faulty generator, a massive explosion. The graffiti was explained as my frantic, panicked mind. My parents, heartbroken, finally understood. Blackwood had been a mistake. They got me the best therapy, real therapy, and I slowly began to heal. I'm 18 now, and I'm no longer a troubled student. I'm a hacker, a digital artist. I channel my rebellious energies into finding loopholes, exposing corruption, and disrupting systems that seek to control. My art is chaotic, vibrant, and utterly uncompliant. Every piece I create is a middle finger to conformity, a reminder of the lesson I learned in the ruins of Blackwood Academy. True freedom isn't about escaping a system, it's about breaking its programming from within. And sometimes, chaos is the only way to save yourself. And that gash on my arm, it healed, leaving a jagged scar, a permanent mark, a reminder that some rules are meant to be broken, not just for survival, but for the very soul. If you find yourself in a place that promises rehabilitation, but feels more like a prison, pay close attention to the rules, because some institutions don't want to improve you. They want to change you into something they can control. But schools aren't the only places with strange rules that guard terrifying truths. Sometimes the most dangerous instructions come from the very streets you walk every day. Imagine a specific pedestrian crossing in a large metropolis that, after midnight, becomes a threshold to something more. Traffic lights flicker irregularly. The distant sound of traffic is muffled by an unnatural silence, and reflections in puddles seem to move independently. Subscribe to Midnight Rules and hit that notification bell for more bone-chilling tales of twisted rules that could save your life or cost you everything you hold dear. Next week, we step into the urban uncanny with the Midnight Crosswalk, Rules for the Urban Traveler.